8:22 at the Big 550 KTRS. That music means it's time for our weekly visit with Dr. Brad Freeman, who's a professor of surgery at Washington University. Brad, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Paul.
Yesterday, of course, was Election Day, and all the politicians today who won are talking about how popular they are when we actually know that political popularity is somewhere down there between earworm and Ebola. I'm curious about where doctors fit in modern society, particularly on the trust scale. Has that remained high through the years?
Well, I was thinking about this study, Paul, as I was driving to work yesterday. I felt very good about voting, and then turned into your broadcast, and you told you astutely reported how all the negative advertising really beats down the perception of politicians in society. So then I got pretty depressed by the time I made it to work.
I'm sorry.
But nonetheless, I think you were accurate. So it brings up an interesting question, and I think the physician or medical community has an important role to play in influencing public policy, and obviously to do that, ideally they'd be held in high regard by the public. And when I say they should have an important role, I mean certainly things as crafting the response to Ebola or weighing in as to maybe how you implement the Affordable Care Act and those such a things. So it's very important that they're held in some esteem and that they're respected and that their judgment is valued. So this was a group that looked at public polling data for physicians over a number of decades, and not only looked at it in the United States but compared it to industrialized countries. And over the past 2 to 3 decades, there's been a tremendous drop in kind of a basic question when you ask the general public, do you place a great deal of trust in leaders of the medical community? And for instance, back in the 60s, 73% of the public stated that they had a great deal of trust in the medical community. And if you ask that today, 34% expressed that view. So that's pretty profound, and it ranks basically 24th of 29 countries, so it ranks behind countries such as Croatia or Slovakia. So the U.S. ranks way down there, and it's somewhat like the way we perceive maybe our congressmen. We don't like Congress, if you ask us generically, but we like our congressman or congresswoman, and with a very high rate, turn them to power. Most people said, their last encounter with their personal physician was positive, and I think that this really just reflects how the public views a lot of public institutions, whether you're talking about politicians or you're talking about the church or you're talking about government. I think there's a lot of skepticism and scrutiny in the way that they're perceived in the media, and I think the medical community also has had a tarnished image over the years.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me. I am a skeptic about many, many things, but the fact that we have stopped believing scientists and doctors and people in the medical community and instead believe anything we read on the internet or, hey, I heard that, as opposed to somebody who has actually done the work and read the real studies and knows the human body better than we do, that bothers me a lot. It must drive you crazy.
Well, I think it's a two-edged sword, and for on one hand, I think the fact that there is so much information readily available to patients and consumers when they go to their physician, I think is fantastic. So that the ability to say Google and say understand diseases and read a lot about diseases and understand the various therapies and understand who provides therapies and how you rate physicians. I have to say, in general, I think that is very positive, and I think it really sets the stage to create a partnership between patients and physicians. And I think maybe to an extent, the type of skepticism that you allude to is maybe a consequence of that. So I think in general, the fact that there's an explosion of information that patients have access to at the end of the day is positive. But nonetheless, it certainly has taken its toll on the way the medical profession is perceived.
Yeah. All right, let's get off this and talk about something else, and that is there appears to be a potential new way to detect colon cancer. What's this story?
And I think that this is an exciting and promising development, and the FDA a few weeks ago has approved a test that, and the nature of the test is really an application of cutting-edge genetic technology. It looks for DNA from colon cancer cells in the stool. So it's analogous to a test that has been available for decades that would say test blood in the stool, but this really takes it to a new level, and that is it specifically looks for cells that have specifically come from potentially cancers. And this test right now is not, even though it's been approved by the FDA, it's not widely available, and many of the professional organizations have not come down with an opinion as to how it should be used with respect to other screening tests for cancer. But I would say this is one of those things as to stay tuned, because I think that this technology inevitably will evolve and will probably be appropriate not only for things such as colon cancer, but for a variety of cancers. And I think it really is a very nice application, again, of some cutting-edge genetic technology to a very common condition. But the mainstay of therapy, or mainstay of screening for colon cancer, continues to be having a colonoscopy, which is a specific examination of the colon. And we'll have to see how this test shakes out in head-to-head comparisons with that.
All right, now, while we're in that part of the body, the last thing I want to ask you about here, and I apologize to anybody who's having breakfast right now, but I read a story yesterday about a new pill that could help people with colitis. And I know people who have Crohn's and colitis and other intestinal diseases or symptoms or syndromes. But correct me if I'm wrong, are they making a pill out of poop?
Yeah, so this is again kind of I don't want to overstate it to say it's a game changer, but it's an interesting technology, and it's a people call it quote unquote a fecal transplant, and the idea is that there is a condition that is the result of people taking antibiotics that results in a very severe inflammation and infection of the colon, and this has become very common in society today, and it can be immensely expensive to care for, because these patients are placed in isolation in hospitals. Many times they have to undergo surgery in severe cases, and it's something we're seeing more and more of. And the reason for this developing is that one of the things that what happens when we take antibiotics is that it really changes the population of the germs and bacteria in our colon. And if you can essentially reconstitute the normal population, by and large, it cures the condition. So these investigators had the very insightful idea that if you could somehow get stool from a normal individual, cleanse it in a fashion so that it won't infect an individual with, say, some infectious process such as HIV or hepatitis or something like that, and provide it in pill form, that this would be if you will, somewhat of an elegant solution to the problem. And the preliminary data states that this is in fact very promising. So I think very much like the colon cancer test we talked about, I would say stay tuned. I think that this is something that will probably become more standardized and broadly available. Right now it's only available in a research setting. So again, it's called a fecal transplant. It's kind of a strange name.
Yeah.
I think something that will be coming down the pipe.
You put what in a pill that you want
That's
me to
right.
swallow?
That's right.
Yeah.
They'll have to work on some branding on this one, but I think we're going to see it.
I think you're going to need a couple spoonsful of sugar to get that one go down.
You got it.
Dr. Brad Freeman is a professor of surgery in Washington University and a contributor every Wednesday here to McGraw Live in the Morning. Thanks, Brad.
Hey, have a great day.
I'm Paul Harris. This is the Big 550.